I know you've heard a slippery slope argument before. It seems like every time anybody tries to have a hard conversation about business, politics, or relationships, people love to whip out the slippery slope argument. You want school uniforms? Well, that means that the kids will do less shopping at local stores, which means the stores will close, which will hurt our economy. You're a Democrat who wants background checks for guns? Well, my friend, it's a slippery slope from there, because after that, what prevents the government from implementing new surveillance programs or taking away guns entirely? You're a Republican who wants to pray at a high school football game? Well, if you do that, the next thing we know, we'll have a church-sponsored theocracy. Do you want emotional support dogs allowed on college campuses? Well, in that case, what will stop students from bringing their emotional support horses, snakes, or scorpions? If you take more than a moment to think about any of these arguments, you'll immediately see their flaws. Kids will not wear their school uniforms 24/7 and will still need to buy clothes to hang out with their friends after school. What's to stop mass surveillance or widespread gun confiscation after background checks are implemented? Well, you need to make lots of new legislation and get the Supreme Court to side with you. That prayer at a football game will not be the catalyst that leads Catholics, Protestants, or any other religion to become the state-sponsored church of the United States of America. And you can allow emotional support dogs without allowing emotional support turkeys. So why, despite how logically flawed these arguments are, do we constantly fall for them? Well, that's what we're going to answer today. Before we jump in, my name is Kobe Hunter, and I love learning about how the business world works. It's my mission to help you succeed in life, whether that be in learning how to budget and invest better, or being able to spot a slippery slope argument when you are presented with it in your business or political interactions. If you like learning about how the world works, and you don't want to be a sheep that runs off the cliffs of stupidity, consider clicking that little subscribe button, and let's learn about what slippery slopes are, why we fall for them, and most importantly, how we can keep ourselves from being tricked by these fallacies. Let's start by defining what a slippery slope fallacy is. According to Grammarly, the slippery slope fallacy is a logical fallacy that claims that one event or action will lead to another more extreme event or action. This could be directly causing that follow-up event, setting a precedent for it, or simply creating an environment where that follow-up event can occur. Other names for the slippery slope fallacy include the dam burst fallacy, the domino fallacy, and the thin edge of a wedge fallacy. As you saw from our examples in the beginning, people oftentimes use the slippery slope fallacies to try to magnify the scare factor of a thing happening. Let's be honest, most people don't really care if there's one service dog in their classroom. It's quiet, it stays in the corner, doesn't really bother anyone, and it's cute. But if I can convince you that if you allow this one service dog, then in the next couple of years, classrooms will be glorified barns that are nearly impossible to learn in, you're going to be much more likely to oppose that measure. Slippery slope arguments work because humans are hardwired to be drawn to fear. We are designed to assume that things can kill us. This comes from thousands of years of natural selection where, if you heard a rustle in the bushes, the humans who always assumed that it was a lion and ran away, even if it ended up just being a bunny, survived, while the ones who didn't run got eaten. So our brains are much more willing to latch onto these extremely horrible hypotheticals because of this evolutionary bias. In retrospect, slippery slope arguments of the past seem pretty silly. Whether it be big tobacco claiming that there would be riots on planes if smoking were banned on them, for the record, no riots ever happened, or if it were people saying that bestiality and polygamy would become legal if gay marriage were legalized. That also hasn't happened. The hard part of identifying and fighting the slippery slope fallacy is that almost every single slippery slope fallacy is asserting something will happen in the future. And regardless of what that 15-year-old crypto millionaire will tell you on TikTok, he nor anyone else knows that X, Y, or Z penny stock is going to go to the moon. And the reality is, even the smartest of people have a really hard time predicting the future. As Economics Explained always says,
nobody can predict the future, least of all economists.
So how can we tell if a slippery slope argument is a fallacy or a fair argument that needs to be considered? Well, the main way to tell if a slippery slope argument is fallacious or not is by seeing how closely the causes and effects actually are. The questions we have to raise here are, will A lead to B, will B lead to C, and how likely are these things to actually occur? If it's a 5% likelihood of going from A to B and a 20% likelihood of going from B to C, that's a 1% chance that the final thing will actually occur. But if A to B is 80% and B to C is 70%, that's a much higher 56%. Let's use a business example to demonstrate how to deal with someone who's using the slippery slope kind of thinking. Let's say you're a consultant for a company that is worried about letting their employees work remotely. The company's CEO says that fully embracing remote work will make employees feel less connected to the organization, and over time, this will lead to decreased employee loyalty, morale, and commitment, which will lead to higher turnover rates and a decline in the quality of work. Now, do we know that this will actually happen? Of course not. This level of extrapolation is like when you text a girl and you don't hear back immediately and therefore they must hate you. These assertions are not backed up by any facts. They're simply guesses about the future that management is saying must be true. Now, many of you guys might be thinking that the best way to handle this use of a slippery slope fallacy is just to call it out as such. You'll see a lot of people online typing fallacy in all caps. But this isn't the best way to win in a negotiation of any kind because it puts people on the defensive and entrenches them in their position. And so you should definitely not say, Mr. CEO, sir, that's a slippery slope fallacy and you have no idea what you're talking about. And you should also not start with trying to destroy their argument by pointing out the weaknesses of going fully in person, like being unable to get the best talent. Instead, the best way to handle someone in a slippery slope mindset is to ask the person in detail why they believe each part of the slope chain will actually happen. Then together you can talk about how likely each part of the chain is and what can be done to mitigate the negative effects of that chain if the whole thing is indeed likely to occur, which it probably won't, but you don't need to tell them that. In this case, do we know that employees will feel less connected to the organization? If so, what can we do about keeping them connected while still letting them work from home? And if they do work from home, does this really lead to higher turnover and lower quality of work? Are there any sources that push back on these assumptions? And if so, how can we maximize our company's effectiveness while minimizing the drawbacks? This example is far less polarizing than things like abortion, taxes, gun control, food stamps, critical race theory, or any of the other dozens of topics that people are fighting about in the world today. But if we can master identifying when we fall into the slippery slope fallacy in the small things, hopefully we can get better at seeing them on the big stage. I really hope you guys found this video informative, and if you did, consider hitting that little subscribe button. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.